Today we're going to install a third brake light camera with a rear view mirror monitor and a Mercedes-Benz Sprinter. First thing we have to do is take out the two T25 torque screws on both sides of the light housing. We're going to pry the light housing off. There's going to be some foam tape holding it on. There's going to be some factory wires attached. We'll have to unclip that clip. What we're going to do now is remove the light housing assembly from the light because we're going to reinsert it into the back of our new camera. We're going to use our pry bar, pry it in the edge on the sides. I put one on one side and one on the other so it spreads the housing apart, and then we're going to pry from one end. There we go. We got our insert out, now reinsert it into the new light camera housing. When we reinsert our light housing into our new camera housing, we will put the longer flat side to the bottom of our new camera light assembly, and then we'll just push it in smoothly and it should clip right into the new tabs on our light. And now we'll put our foam tape on the edge surrounding the light, and then we'll reinstall it. We'll tuck our wires through this hole. We'll insert our factory plug back into the connection, tuck our wires in the hole, and then we'll remount our new camera light assembly. And we'll reinstall our two T25 screws on both ends. After we put both screws in, we'll go on the inside and run our camera cable from the back of the truck to the front of the truck. Okay, now our camera is mounted up in the back. We have our wire tucked through the hole. We're going to come into the back of the truck and remove the factory light. That's going to give us access to our camera cable inside the cavity of the truck. We're going to pull that out, let it hang. We're going to run our new camera cable that's going to go from the front of the truck to the back of the truck. We're going to remove the black wire harness at the top of the driver's side so we can get access to our factory wire harness. After we take off our wire harness cover, we're going to wrap our new camera cable around the wire harness so we don't have to use zip ties to hold it up. We're just run the length. We're going to tuck it through the hole at the factory ground spot and run it to our factory light hole. Now our camera cable is hanging out the hole where the light is. We're going to connect that to our new camera cable. We're going to push the two 5-pin connectors together and screw the silver nut over top, and then slide our rubber boot over to make it weatherproof. Now we have our camera cable run from the back of the truck to the front of the truck. We're going to figure out our length into the cab, so we're going to hold our cable out and do a test fit length down to the steering wheel area. Our cable will touch the floor. Now we got our length. We're going to go back up and snake it through up into the headliner above the cab area. We got to remove the factory panel. We'll push up on the top of the coat hook and wiggle it off. We got to remove it with a T25 Torx tip. We'll put it in a safe place so we don't lose that. We'll pull the factory panel back. Now our camera cable is tucked up above the weather stripping. We're going to tuck it down the front A-pillar next to the left side of the steering wheel. We'll drop it straight down, and then once that goes through, we'll fish it through the bottom by our fuse box. Well, our fuse box cover is right down here. We'll open the lid and reach our hand up, and we should be able to feel our cable underneath there. Now our camera cable is hanging down through our fuse panel compartment. We're going to remove the next panel on that top left corner. That's going to be a T25 screw. We'll drop that down, and that's going to give us access to where our module is going. Now we'll mount our monitor to the factory mirror. The monitor is going to clip onto the back side of the mirror. And you can see the two clips back here. It's stuck on the edge. Now we'll run our monitor wire up above the headliner. We'll tuck it in along the edge all the way across, and we'll drop it down our pillar right where we ran our camera cable. Now we got our two cables hanging out the compartment on the left side below the steering wheel. Our monitor wire is the big fat round plug. We're going to hook that up to the plug on our module. We'll line up those two arrows there. Now we'll connect our camera cable to camera 3 back up on the module. The harness that gets our power and ground and reverse signal, we'll plug that white connector into the white 6-pin plug on the back of the connector like that. When we go to do our electrical connections, we got to strip our wires back a little bit more. We're going to strip our power wire back. Ground wire, we're going to put a 1/4-inch ring terminal, and on the power wire we're going to put an add-a-line fuse, which is going to hook into our fuse panel. When we got those two connections, we'll go back under the dashboard We had tucked our module up inside that hole where the wires came through before. We ran our wires down into the fuse area. Okay, now we got our Adeline fuse with the 2 fuses in it. The blue one is the 15 amp that we took out of the factory position, and the purple one is a 3 amp fuse we inserted into our Adeline. That is in line with our red power wire. So we're going to reinstall this into our fuse position number 13 in the fuse panel, and that is going to give us our power for our backup camera. Our ground wire is going to mount in that little hole back there behind the lever for opening the hood. What we're going to do is stick a lag through our ring terminal into that hole, and that's going to give us our camera ground. Now that we have our power and ground wires hooked up, we got to snake our blue wire up the A-pillar. We're going to send it back up through our hole, and then we're going to pull it out the top so we can connect it to our factory wire harness up on the A-pillar. Now we got our blue wire up by the A-pillar, and we're going to butt connect, splice it to the white wire blue stripe in the driver's side A-pillar. That's going to give us our reverse signal trigger. After you get your reverse trigger hooked up and your power and ground wires are all hooked up, you're going to want to test your camera. We'll put the vehicle in reverse. We're in reverse. Our camera's on. We can see a pedestrian back there. And we'll turn it off, and camera's off. Now that we know our camera works, we gotta put the truck back together. We'll reinstall the factory A-pillar cover, and then we'll go down. We have all our wires, and we got our module tucked away up in this cavity. We'll reinstall the cover, and we're done. When you're installing a Sprinter integrated camera with the factory screen, you gotta open the cover if it has one. Sometimes they just have a storage compartment. Pull the factory plastic surround off from around the radio housing. Just pull it back with your hands. We'll pop right out, swing it down, out of the way. You have 4 T25 screws. You have to remove those from around the 4 corners of the radio. We'll pull our radio out and let that hang. Now that our radio assembly is dismounted, we're going to run our power and ground cable down through the hole behind the radio. We're going to tuck it down the bottom left corner and pull it out underneath the steering wheel area. When we get that through, we're going to pull our camera cable that we ran from the back of the truck to the front back up into the radio compartment. Now that our power connection is run down to the bottom under the steering wheel, we're going to connect it to the camera cable assembly. The red plug is going to connect to the black plug on our power and ground cable. Then we're going to connect our yellow RCA to the gender bender. That is going to connect to our FACR cable that plugs into the back of our green plug on our radio. We're going to tape all our connections together so they don't disconnect. We'll push that in there tight. Next step is to take off the 18-pin Molex, the square plug on the far left side. We disconnected our 18-pin Molex from the rear of the radio. Now we're going to insert our new 18 Molex wire harness module to the factory plug. Clip that together. We gotta connect the other end of our 18 pin to the back of the radio. Clip it in and rotate the little lever back. We gotta connect our 2 camera cables, the one from the camera from the rear of the truck and then the one connected to the RCA that goes to the back of the radio. Before we program the radio, we have to power up our camera system the same way we did in the previous steps. To program the radio, we have to use this blue wire, the input 2 wire, send ignition power to it temporarily while we do our programming. What we have to do is turn our ignition key to the auxiliary position. Our key is on and the radio has turned on. So now what we're going to do is go and we're going to flick the headlight switch. At the same time, there's going to be a message popping up on our screen that says diagnosis. That means that the radio is programmed, and we're going to disconnect our ignition power from our blue wire and then we'll turn our radio back on manually. Now that our radio is programmed, we're ready to test it. We're going to put it into reverse, and our camera image pops up. Now our radio is tested and working. We're going to put everything back together. We're going to tuck all our wires back inside, wrap them up nicely, and reinstall the radio and the 4 screws, and put the plastic surround back in.